Thank you. Other questions? Mr. Kemp.
I'd like to ask about the inclusion of the bus operators and their procedures when we're involved in various kinds of responses, whether it's a hard lockdown or a fire drill or whatever. And the reason I'm asking is because we're constantly in motion, picking up and delivering children to various buildings, and at any one point in the day when one of these events might occur, it's likely that some children are in transit. So the question is, are we working with the bus company so that we have a common understanding what they're going to do when and if something happens? For instance, will they let the children off the bus? Will they keep them on and turn them around and take them back to their homes? It can vary whether or not you have a hurricane going on, or a tornado, or a building invasion in the case of like Columbine. So I haven't heard anything this evening about what we're doing with the bus company to coordinate their expectations and responses.
If I may defer to Mr. Pucara, who is our liaison to the bus company.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. To your point, Mr. Kemp, we have requested their protocols and plans so that we can integrate them into our response plans. But I think your suggestion of integrating them into our drills and exercises is a good suggestion, and one that I think we will be following up on with our Health and Safety Committee meeting this week.
I have a question about whether or not we're currently discussing a resource officer at the middle school. We found a resource officer at the high school to be very successful for many years now. And I'd like to know what our current thinking is on that.
Well, at this time, I don't have the resources to provide a resource officer there. I have 9 openings in my schedule, and we've had many openings for the past several years. I just don't have the bodies to provide one. My mission is to provide law enforcement for the community. Through agreement with Dr. Conway and the Board of Education, we have provided a SRO at the high school out of my budget. I don't have the resources at this time to add an additional officer to the middle school. I got 9 openings. It's 20% of my workforce right now is unavailable to man my cars. So at this time, there is no discussion.
Do you think there might be some merit in assigning that same officer responsibilities to include some coverage at BCMS?
Mr. Officer Langlis has been responding up to the different schools to handle issues as the student resource officer. He's gone to several different schools to handle issues involving students. Quite frankly, he's busy enough at the high school. He teaches classes, he meets with parents, he meets with kids. He has to intervene as a police officer on occasion. He is very, very busy there. He certainly, time being, would be welcome to go to the middle school, to go to the elementary schools. I've also encouraged my officers during the day, if things are quiet, to get out and walk through the school so they're familiarized with it. My day shift officers would be the ones that more likely than not would be responding to an incident at these schools. So we encourage them to go to the schools, to meet the principals. My lieutenant has done that, met the different principals, because even though he's been a lifelong resident of Vernon, they have several new faces, so he's gone out to meet them. We constantly encourage our officers to get into schools when activity allows us. As to whether the SRO at the high school would have the time to allocate on a regular basis, I don't know. I'd have to speak with him about that.
Thank you.
Other questions from anybody who hasn't asked a question? Otherwise, I'll do the follow-up for Ms. Bush. You go.
Thank you. One of the things that we need to keep the students safe. If something happens either in the community or in an adjacent community, one thing I don't know if it has been addressed at all is that parents will come to the school to remove their children from the school. is there any procedure in place that if you get an influx of parents, how you would dismiss the students without having them come in and dismissing them if there's a large number of students trying to get their kids out of school at once? That's something that, you know, is not always thought about, but it is something that possibly may happen. And that's something that has crossed my mind, where if you get a large number of students, they have every right to take their child out, but they can't, the difficult part of it is if it's not done in an orderly fashion and have some type of procedure in place for that. So you can't have them running in and grabbing their kid out of their classroom and dragging them out. You need to have like a certain place, a certain procedure, and things like that. I don't know if there's anything in place for that.
Thank you, Mrs. Bush. We actually, that's a wonderful thought that we will certainly follow up on. I think that our first practice with that was our bus accident last April 26th. We had 29 students on the bus. 14 of them were transported, but 15 actually went back to the middle school, and so were either with the nurse or in the office or with the cafeteria, and they had to come up with a system very quickly of identifying parents and making sure everything was going well, and they were able to do that very quickly. So I think that's a great suggestion, and we will make sure that we have that protocol down. Well, thank you.
If I may, Dr. Conway, Ms. Bush, are you referring to an incident that happens at the schools where the parents are similar to Newtown, where the parents were rushing to the scene? Or you were,
My thinking is that if there's some kind of incident, maybe not even in Vernon, and the parents want to get their kids and get them home and maybe keep them away from exposure to, I'll just say like 9/11, where they just want to make sure their child's safe, and we didn't know what was happening. And I did hear of parents coming to the school to get their children out and get them home and get them safe, not knowing what the complete threat is. Not saying that there's something specifically at the school, but if you had a large number of parents that wanted to get their children and take them home, there needs to be some kind of protocol so that you maybe have something set up in the gym so that you can let them in the gym and, you know, have people there that will call down and have this dismissed or escorted to the gym. You never know. So I'm just saying that that's something that we don't usually think about for a mass dismissal, for something like that, where parents want to have their children with them and home and safe.
Thank you. Any final questions? Ms. Starr.
Has there been any breaches, I guess, that would require an executive session for you to explain to us what you've discovered over the last few weeks of practicing lockdowns and all, and the reporting of the officers who've been evaluating what's going on in the schools?
So far, we have doors that don't lock and questions about where we send children in the building. So there's nothing huge. I actually have 6 of the reports in my office that arrived today as to things that they called findings. So, and that's really more or less what it was. Or a teacher has said, gee, I was in the computer lab. Should I go back to my classroom, which is just down the hall, or should I stay? So it really has been, it's brought up questions like that, but nothing that were, executive session, security that the public could know. It's just process right now. So the policemen will be at their second lockdown. And so hopefully they'll get some more feedback and answers to their questions as well at that point. But I think that the officer who will be doing the vulnerability assessment, he calls it a threat assessment, I call it the vulnerability assessment. I'm anticipating that he will then be talking about things that we don't see as members of the public, that we would not notice, and that that would be something that the board would really need to hear in executive session.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Actually, I have a member of the audience who would like to ask a question, and I will entertain the question if you want to speak up.
Thank you.
There is
I have a son in the high
microphone.
school.
Yeah. Could you please identify yourself
Yeah,
first?
my name's Rich Graybon, and I have a son in the high school. I've had 3 kids in school. During the evening, I heard a lot of discussion about security officers and the complexity of the building, and the fact that you've got roughly 1,000 students, and perhaps you'll have at most 3 security officers in the building. I think it's pretty obvious that the largest number of eyes that you have in that building are the students. And the question that I have pertains to the intercoms that were mentioned. Have the students received instruction on what to do and how to use the intercoms to report an incident that is coming down that so far, no alarm has been raised? Because, I mean, you could take advantage of the vast number of eyes of the student body to respond and alert those that need to be alerted.
Thank you. Dr. Conway, or anybody, I'm not sure if you have any immediate response?
I don't have an immediate response. I think the idea, and it's, just having heard it is a good one. But I think that would be something we certainly would need to talk over with our school resource officer and to see. We do have lots of adults in the building. It's rare that students, except in the senior lounge, which is wide open, are without an adult. So, that's certainly something that we should know how to do. And I'm hoping all the intercoms, the kids would know how to work those. But that's a great idea.
Thank you.
We'll talk with the police about that. Thank you.